They accused an elderly black woman of suspicious behavior on her own porch. But when her son arrived, the situation changed drastically. What do you think happened next? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories. Esther Robinson, a 75-year-old black woman, sat on the front porch of her home, where she had lived for over 4 decades. The evening was warm, the air heavy with the remnants of a summer day. The rhythmic creak of her rocking chair accompanied her thoughts, a soothing cadence against the changing world around her. Esther's home was a modest, well-kept reflection of a life filled with resilience and hard work. The chipped paint on the walls contrasted with the flourishing garden she had meticulously tended for years. Each flower bore the touch of her weathered hands. This house wasn't just a structure. It was a testament to her perseverance and memories. Tonight, like so many other evenings, she sat contentedly, sipping sweet tea from a glass that caught the fading sunlight. Across the street, her new neighbor, Mrs. Adler, walked her small terrier. Esther noticed how Mrs. Adler always quickened her pace when passing by, clutching her purse tighter as if Esther posed some kind of threat. It was a familiar dance, one Esther had seen countless times before: fearful glances, judgmental whispers, assumptions based on nothing but the color of her skin. Sighing softly, Esther remained dignified. She had weathered storms far greater than wary neighbors. However, the peace of the evening was about to shatter in ways she couldn't have imagined. In the distance, the faint sound of sirens reached her ears. She stiffened slightly. Decades of memories flooded back, marching for civil rights, standing firm during protests, teaching her son, Malcolm, how to navigate a world steeped in bias and suspicion. Despite all those lessons, here she was, at 75, still living in a world where her mere presence could draw alarm. As the sirens grew louder, Esther's pulse quickened. She told herself it was routine, nothing to do with her. But when 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt a few houses down, her worst fears began to take shape. Leaning forward in her rocking chair, she squinted at the scene unfolding. 2 officers stepped out, both white, their expressions hard and unreadable. One, a tall man with piercing blue eyes and a close-cropped haircut, seemed to lead the way. The other, a woman with short brown hair, appeared hesitant, her posture betraying a hint of unease. Esther's stomach twisted when she saw Mrs. Adler animatedly pointing in her direction. The officers nodded and began walking purposefully toward her house. "What in the world?" Esther muttered, gripping the armrests of her chair. Her mind raced. What could they possibly want? Had something happened in the neighborhood? The tall officer reached her porch first, his stance authoritative. "Ma'am, we've had a report of suspicious activity in the area. Mind if we ask you a few questions?" His tone bordered on accusatory. Summoning her strength, Esther straightened. Her voice remained calm but firm. "Of course, officer, but I'm not sure how I can help. I've been sitting right here all evening." The woman officer stepped forward. Her tone was gentler but no less serious. "We received a call about someone matching your description walking around the neighborhood, looking into windows. Can you account for your whereabouts in the last hour?" Esther blinked in disbelief. "Young lady," she said, her voice laced with incredulity, "I've been right here on this porch since after lunch. I haven't moved from this spot, let alone gone peeping into windows. At my age, that would be quite the feat." The male officer snorted dismissively. "Yeah, right. Look, ma'am, we have a witness who says otherwise. Why don't you just tell us what you were really up to?" A surge of indignation rose within Esther. Her hands trembled slightly, but her resolve was unyielding. She met the officer's cold gaze. "Young man, I've lived in this house for over 40 years. I have no reason to snoop into anyone's business, and I deeply resent your implication." The male officer's posture became more aggressive. He stepped closer, his hand resting on his holster. "Listen here. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Admit you were casing the houses, and we can sort this out downtown." Esther's heart pounded, but she refused to back down. "I have done nothing wrong, officer," she said firmly. "If you have more questions, you can ask them right here on my porch." "That's it," the man snapped. Stand up. Put your hands behind your back. Esther's breath caught. Was this really happening? She thought of her son, Malcolm, now a captain in the police force, and all the lessons she had taught him about justice and resilience. What would he say if he saw this? With a deep breath, she made a decision. She would not let these officers strip her of her dignity. I will not, she said clearly, her voice steady. I have done nothing wrong, and I will not be treated like a criminal in my own home. The officers exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for her defiance. The male officer's grip on his holster tightened, while the woman hesitated, glancing back at the patrol car as though reconsidering the situation. Esther prayed silently for strength. Just then, the low hum of an approaching car reached their ears. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. The officers didn't notice until a commanding voice cut through the tension. What exactly is going on here? All heads turned to see a tall black man in his early 50s stepping out of the SUV. His tailored suit and authoritative presence made him impossible to ignore. Esther's face lit up with relief and pride. "Malcolm," she called out, her voice wavering slightly. "Thank God you're here." The male officer stepped forward, attempting to assert control. "Sir, this is a police matter. I'm going to have to ask you to step back." Malcolm's sharp gaze fixed on his mother, visibly shaken but standing firm. Turning to the officer, his voice was calm but carried an unmistakable authority. "Officer, I am Captain Malcolm Robinson of the City Police Department, and this woman," he gestured to Esther, "is my mother." The color drained from the officer's face as the weight of his actions began to sink in. The tension in the air shifted as Malcolm confronted the officers about their behavior, making it clear that their actions were unacceptable. Esther watched her son stand tall, pride and sorrow mingling in her heart. This wasn't just about her. It was about a system that had failed so many. But in that moment, she knew they had taken a step toward justice, and together, they would continue the fight.